paper. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Alright, it's fun.
Hand sewing has been around since the Paleolithic era, or about 3.3 million years. It is a form of textile art that has been on a slow decline in use since the early 1900s. Sewing doesn't look like it did 3.3 million years ago, with animal bones for needles and animal tissue/sinew for thread, to sew together clothing or shelters such as the Inuit used to. I have been sewing on and off since about 2016. My great-grandmother had taught me how to hand sew because I had a hole in my favorite t-shirt and I refused to throw it away, so I begged her to teach me. I want to show this useful skill that instead of throwing out clothing and wasting an easily fixed problem, you can learn to patch up rips, tears, or holes. So to get started, you have to familiarize yourself with what you are using. So I'm using colorful threads like red, brown, and blue, and scissors, needles, and a seam ripper for mistakes, and a pin, like a wheel pins. If you want to know what you are doing, you have to familiarize yourself not only with the tools but with the fabrics. So if you're going to use a denim or leather fabric, you're going to want to use a thicker and larger needle so that it can go through the fabric. But I'm going to use standard size needles, which are used for polyester, cotton, and spandex. There are 3 basic stitches I'm going to be showing today, which is a basting stitch, a whip stitch, and an X stitch. A basting stitch is basically like using a brightly colored thread, like red, and tying a knot at the end, so it's like about this long, and then tying a knot, and then using the thread and just going in and out like that until you reach the knot, and then going in and out multiple times until it creates lines, because then it can show you like the general idea of where you want to stitch, or embroider, and that's what we use for basting stitches. Next is a whip stitch. Whip stitches are usually used for holes in your clothing, and you want to turn this inside out, like a piece of clothing inside out, so then it is like this, and you want to start from the back, so then you push the needle through at the beginning of the hole, and you'll want to go around and over the hole, so then you go through the back again, and it creates a little bit of like a ridge. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like over. And you continue going on over the top like that for the entire hole, and it's a very common and very fast way to stitch up a hole. Next is a X stitch. An X stitch is basically when you want to sew together 2 pieces of fabric to like hold it together, you will use an X stitch, and that's basically you want to start under, and you want to go up and through, and then diagonally across to the other side of the fabric, and then go from the bottom up, and then diagonally in the other way, so then it creates an X, and that's an X stitch. And I use that to hold a piece of fabric together so that I can whip stitch it or use my sewing machine. When to use these stitches, a basting stitch is like plotting out or getting a general idea, like I had said previously. For like embroidering, whip stitches is when you need to join 2 pieces of fabric together for like a seam ripped on a blanket, pillow, or a hole. And an X stitch is, I use an X stitch when embroidering or tailoring, because tailoring, it's small, secure, and not very noticeable, and it's very like a secure stitch because it has multiple entry and exit points. And that's why I feel like learning to hand sew / mend is important to everyone. Again, I wanted to show this useful skill so that many no longer use. One that is very crucial for small rips, tears, or holes in clothing. Sewing is an important skill because it keeps money in your pocket and prevents waste. Rather than throwing out old clothes that have holes in them or spending a fortune on a seamstress, you can now do at least the basics of sewing, such as when Betty Ross had sewn our American flag together, or when the indigenous people of the Great Plains would sew together the massive wigwams and other structures. Thank you for listening to my speech.